Richard Tregaskis sits with his knees angled inward, his pack pulled tight to keep it from sliding, his notebook wrapped once in oilcloth and pressed flat against his chest. The engine noise is constant enough that it stops sounding mechanical. It becomes vibration instead. A pressure through the deck, through the soles of boots, through the bones of the men sitting shoulder to shoulder on the benches. It is thinner than a rifle. It feels heavier. The boat smells like fuel and wet canvas. Salt hangs in the air, not sharp yet, but present, the way it always is near open water. No one speaks loudly. Voices, when they appear, are fragments that don't travel far. A hand gesture, a nod. Someone shifts, and the whole bench adjusts with him, wood creaking under combined weight. It is dark enough that faces are shapes more than features. Helmets break the line of shoulders into uneven silhouettes. Every few seconds the bow lifts and drops again. Not hard, just enough to remind everyone that the water underneath is moving whether they want it to or not. Tregaskis keeps his notebook where he can feel it. He has already learned that anything loose will be gone the moment the ramp comes down. He does not know yet how deep the water will be. No one does. The briefings did not include that detail, or if they did, it has dissolved into the engine noise and the waiting. The shoreline is not a line. It is a darker band against a darker sky, interrupted by trees that appear to float because their trunks are swallowed by shadow. Somewhere in that darkness is land. Somewhere beyond that is everything that has been named and planned and timed. None of it is visible from here. The boat slows. Not much. Just enough that the change is felt more than heard. Bodies shift forward instinctively, as if leaning could shorten the distance. The coxswain raises a hand. The men nearest the ramp tighten their grips on rifles, on straps, on nothing at all. Water slaps against the hull, louder now. Spray drifts in, cold on the face. Tregaskis blinks and tastes salt. He thinks, briefly and without language, about what will happen to the notebook if he falls. He presses it flatter. The ramp comes down. Sound breaks open. Metal hits water. Boots hit water. The first men step forward and disappear to the knees, to the waist, deeper than expected. Packs swing. One man stumbles and catches himself on another. There is a sharp intake of breath. It might be a curse. It might be nothing. Tregaskis moves because the men in front of him are moving. The water pulls at his legs immediately, cold and heavy, tugging sideways. The bottom is uneven. He plants one foot, then the other, adjusting without stopping, because stopping feels worse than whatever comes next. Behind him, the boat is already backing away. Ahead, the darkness does not change. There is no clean moment of arrival. There is only motion forward, water draining out of boots, the weight of gear settling again. Whatever this is, it has already begun. Richard Tregaskis has no rank. No men answer to him. No one is watching to see if he advances or hesitates. That absence is its own exposure. He carries no radio. No map that matters beyond the first few minutes. What he has is permission. Even that feels provisional now that his boots are full of water and the shoreline refuses to resolve itself. He was told he could go in with the first wave. Told, not ordered. The word mattered then. It mattered because it meant no one would pull him back if things went badly, and no one would push him forward if he froze. He is here because he asked to be. Because he believed that if he stayed farther offshore or came in later, whatever he wrote would already be a step removed from the thing itself. The briefings gave him language, but not clarity. Objectives, beaches, sectors identified by letters that meant nothing in the dark. He remembers sitting on an ammunition crate while an officer spoke. He remembers watching Marines check gear that had already been checked twice. He remembers nodding along, not because he understood the plan in full, because nodding was expected. The plan belonged to people with authority. His role was to observe how it met reality. He knows what he is not allowed to do. He cannot give instructions. He cannot interfere unless it is unavoidable. He cannot become the story. That line was clear to him before the landing. Less clear now. He adjusts his pack. The notebook shifts against his chest. If someone goes down in front of him, he will have to decide what witnessing requires in that moment. There will be no guidance. He was also told, indirectly, what would happen if he failed. Not in threats, but in tone. If he wrote it too cleanly, it would read like something approved in advance. If he wrote it too honestly, it might never be printed. There were phrases everyone understood without saying aloud. Morale. Home front. Responsibility. The notebook feels heavier because of that, not lighter. He does not know yet where the firing lines are supposed to be. He does not know which officers are nearby. He does not know whether the men moving past him belong to the same unit or another wave bleeding together in the dark. He knows only what he can see within a few yards. Even that comes and goes as bodies pass between him and the faint outline of trees. Standing in water that is slowly draining out of his boots, he believes one thing: the only way to do this job is to stay close enough that his own balance is affected by the same ground. If the men around him have to slow, he slows. If they bunch, he feels the danger of it. If they spread, he risks being alone. This is the limit of his authority. To choose proximity, to keep moving without directing, to remember what his body registers before his mind tries to arrange it into something cleaner. The war will not make space for him. It will proceed at the speed it proceeds. His task, as he understands it now, is not to keep up. It is to not step out of the way. The distance to land does not shorten the way he expects it to. The shoreline stays where it is, a band of darker darkness, while the boat continues to move and the engine continues to thrum. The sensation is not speed, it is pressure. Tregaskis watches the men nearest the bow lean forward again, not because it helps, because waiting without leaning feels like giving something up. Inside the boat, the space is tight enough that movement happens in increments. A shoulder shifts, a knee presses harder against wood. Someone adjusts a strap. The sound of metal briefly cuts through the engine noise, sharp enough to draw a glance. No one speaks about it. Noise is already doing too much. The Marines around him are quiet in a way that does not feel calm. Hands move, checking buckles that were checked minutes ago. Fingers tighten around rifles, then loosen, then tighten again. Faces remain mostly unreadable in the low light. Posture carries its own information, spines straightened, heads angled slightly forward. Tregaskis feels the waiting as a physical condition. His calves are tight from standing in the rocking boat. His shoulders ache where the straps bite. The notebook presses against his chest every time the hull lifts and settles again. He thinks, briefly, about writing something down now, about capturing this part before it dissolves. He understands immediately why that is impossible. There is no stable surface. There is no spare hand. There is only motion and anticipation. The briefings return in pieces rather than sentences. A beach name, a time. The reassurance that resistance might be light. The words float through his mind without anchoring to anything he can see. The shoreline offers no confirmation. The tree line does not reveal whether it is empty or waiting. The water between here and there looks the same as it did minutes ago. The boat slows again. This time the change is unmistakable. The engine drops in pitch. The hull settles lower in the water. The sound of the weight shifts from a constant churn to a more irregular slap against metal. Someone near the front raises a hand. The signal suggests stillness, even though the boat is still moving. The men nearest him respond immediately, bodies tense as if stillness itself might matter. Tregaskis feels his balance change. He spreads his feet slightly, bracing against the bench. He knows that falling here would not be dramatic. No one would shout. He would simply become an obstacle for a second or two. That would be enough. The darkness ahead begins to separate into layers. Water. Then a faint line of surf breaking against something solid. Then trees rising behind it. The beach itself remains invisible, absorbed by shadow and glare. He cannot tell where sand ends. He cannot tell where vegetation begins. He cannot tell, yet, whether anyone is shooting. That absence presses harder than noise would. Every man on the boat has been trained to expect machine guns here, to imagine water erupting in white plumes, to picture bodies going down before they have taken 3 steps. The fact that it is not happening does not bring relief. It sharpens attention instead. The water grows louder. Spray reaches farther into the boat. Salt coats his lips again. He swallows and tastes it. Gritty. Familiar. The notebook shifts slightly as he adjusts his pack. He feels a flash of irritation at the object. Then the recognition. Without it, he would not be here at all. The coxswain calls out something he cannot hear clearly. The words are torn apart by the engine and the wind. The men closest to the ramp respond anyway. Moving into position with the practiced efficiency of repetition. There is no dramatic pause. The approach does not announce itself. It simply reaches the point where there is no more waiting to be done inside the boat. Tregaskis looks once more toward the tree line, trying to read it for intention, for warning, for confirmation of anything he has been told. It offers nothing. The shore remains a shape without meaning. The water continues to move. The boat continues to slow. The waiting does not end. It tightens. The ramp comes down hard enough to send a vibration back through the hull. It is not a clean sound. Metal strikes something that does not yield. Water rushes forward into the space where boots have been braced. The men at the front do not wait for instruction. They step because the ramp is down. Not stepping now would mean blocking everyone behind them. The first Marine disappears deeper than expected. Water surges up his legs, then his waist. His pack jerks sideways as the current catches it. For a fraction of a second, his balance is gone. He recovers without comment and pushes forward. The correction ripples backward. The next man adjusts. The next hesitates just long enough to be noticed. Tregaskis steps into the water. The temperature is immediate. A sharp cold cuts through the fatigue in his legs and replaces it with urgency. The bottom drops unevenly beneath his foot. Sand gives way to something firmer, then shifts again. His boots fill almost at once. The added weight pulls downward and sideways at the same time. Each step becomes recalculation rather than progress. Noise is everywhere now. Water slaps against bodies. Packs creak under strain. Shouted fragments never resolve into sentences. Someone yells a warning that arrives too late to matter. Another voice answers without being heard. The engine noise fades as the boat backs away. The open sound of surf and movement takes its place. Louder, less predictable. He moves forward because stopping would turn him into an obstacle. He keeps his arms close to his sides to avoid catching on someone else's gear. The notebook presses hard against his chest as he leans into the water. A fleeting thought passes through him. If he falls, it will be the first thing to tear loose. He tightens the strap again. He does not slow. Men spread out instinctively. Spacing appears without instruction. The fear of bunching is visible in how they angle their bodies, in how they glance sideways while continuing forward. No one wants to be the reason everyone behind them stalls. The water tugs constantly, a steady lateral pull that makes straight lines impossible. Tregaskis feels the ground rise slightly beneath his feet. The water drops from mid-thigh to knee, then to shin. The change is small but noticeable, enough to shift the work from balance to speed. He takes 2 quicker steps and nearly overcorrects. He catches himself with a sharp breath. Ahead of him, one Marine stumbles and goes down to a knee. His rifle is held above the surface. His face turns upward in surprise. Then he pushes himself back to standing. There is no visible fire. No water plumes. No muzzle flashes cutting the dark. The absence does not register as safety. It registers as delay. Every man here has been trained to expect the first burst at this moment. The fact that it has not come sharpens attention rather than easing it. Bodies remain hunched. Heads stay low. The tree line ahead offers no explanation. The surf breaks around his calves now. White water flashes briefly, then dissolves again. Sand grates inside his boots. His legs feel heavier with each step. The added weight forces a slower rhythm. It does not match the urgency pressing from behind. He adjusts again. Leans forward, accepts the drag rather than fighting it. Someone passes him on the left, moving faster, already shedding water with each stride. Another man lags to his right. A strap has twisted under load. Tregaskis glances once, then looks forward again. He cannot help without stopping. Stopping would mean something worse than leaving it alone. The beach does not announce arrival. There is no line where water ends and land begins. There is only less water, firmer ground. Space opens suddenly as the men fan out instinctively, creating distance where seconds ago there was none. The sound changes again. Surf gives way to muffled footfalls, to the rustle of gear against vegetation. Tregaskis steps fully out of the water. His boots settle, heavy and soaked. His breathing is faster than he expects. He does not stop to correct it. He looks once over his shoulder. The boat is already turning away. Its shape dissolves back into the dark. The water between here and there closes, as if nothing has passed through it. Ahead, the tree line waits. Whatever this landing becomes later does not exist yet. There is only ground beneath his feet, men moving past him, and the understanding, immediate and physical, that the easiest part of this is already over. Before we go any farther, if you're finding yourself drawn into this story, we'd love it if you subscribed. It helps us keep making work like this. Alright, let's continue. The ground rises almost without warning. One step is wet sand. The next is something tangled and resistant. Roots. Low growth. They pull at boots already heavy with water. The transition is abrupt enough that several men adjust at once. Spacing collapses for a moment. Then instinct pushes them apart again. No one calls it out. Everyone feels it. The beach, as Tregaskis had imagined it, does not exist. There is no open strip of sand with a clear edge. There is surf, then shadow, then vegetation pressing forward until it feels like the land itself is advancing. Palms crowd close. Brush breaks outlines. It is impossible to tell how far inland they are meant to go before stopping, or whether stopping is even expected yet. Orders come through in fragments, a hand gesture passed down the line, a voice raised just enough to carry a few yards before dropping again. Tregaskis hears a direction. He cannot tell who gave it. He follows movement rather than instruction. Steps when the men in front of him step. Slows when they slow. He angles slightly left. The cluster ahead of him drifts that way. The fear of machine guns returns here, sharper than it was in the water. Trees feel like concealment for someone else. The brush narrows sightlines to a few yards at most. Every gap becomes a possible firing point. Men angle their bodies sideways as they move. Rifles lifted, muzzles tracking shadows that refuse to become targets. The fact that nothing happens only deepens the tension. Silence here does not feel neutral. It feels provisional. Tregaskis realizes he no longer knows where the shoreline is. The sound of surf has faded, replaced by the dull scrape of boots, by the soft tearing sound of fabric against leaves. The world has closed in, a corridor of bodies and vegetation. He glances back once, sees nothing he recognizes, only shapes that might be men, or might be trees. The sense of having crossed a boundary arrives late, after the crossing itself has already happened. Someone stumbles ahead and swears under his breath. The sound is sharp enough to draw a few quick looks. A strap has snagged on a branch. Two men pause just long enough to free it, then move on. The pause stretches in Tregaskis' mind, not because it lasts long, because it happens where pausing feels dangerous. He feels his own body tense, ready to drop, to run, to do something decisive if the silence breaks. There is still no fire, no clear sign of the enemy. The absence becomes a problem of interpretation. Some men move faster, as if trying to outrun whatever delay this is. Others slow, spread out more deliberately, unwilling to be drawn forward by momentum alone. The line bends, reforms, never becomes a line at all. Tregaskis chooses proximity again. He stays close enough to hear breathing, to catch fragments of whispered exchanges. They do not add up to explanation. Someone asks if anyone has seen an officer. No one answers. Another voice says something about keeping low. The words pass through him without settling. He does not know who is supposed to be directing this moment, or whether direction is even possible under the trees. The ground slopes upward slightly, enough to make legs work harder, enough to suggest they are moving away from the beach. The air feels heavier here, less open. The salt smell fades. Something green and damp replaces it. Sweat collects under his helmet, along his spine, trapped by gear that has not yet dried. Men peel off to either side in small groups. They disappear into thicker brush. Tregaskis watches them go, feels the pull of uncertainty. Following any one group means losing sight of the others. Staying where he is means becoming stationary in a place that feels exposed in ways he cannot name. He moves forward again, matches the pace of the nearest cluster. Whatever cohesion existed on the boat is gone now. Somewhere ahead, a halt ripples backward. It is not announced. It simply happens. Bodies stop moving. Those behind adjust to avoid collision. Tregaskis slows, then stops. He stands, half-crouched. Weight shifted forward. He waits for the reason to arrive. It does not. The trees remain still. The silence holds. This, he understands dimly, is what the landing becomes once it leaves the water. The halt does not come with explanation. It settles in gradually, the way fatigue does. Only after a moment does Tregaskis realize that no one near him is moving anymore. Bodies angle forward. Rifles remain raised. Eyes fix on gaps between trunks and leaves. The posture suggests readiness rather than rest. Whatever pause this is, it has not been agreed upon. It has simply happened. Minutes pass without anyone counting them. The sense of time loosens. Tregaskis shifts his weight slightly. The wet leather of his boots pulls against his ankles. Somewhere ahead, a man coughs once, suppresses the second. The sound feels loud enough to draw fire, even though nothing has happened yet to suggest it will. When movement resumes, it does so unevenly. A few men step forward first, testing the ground. The rest follow in staggered fashion. No signal reaches everyone at once. The advance reforms as a series of small decisions, each made in isolation, each shaped by what the man directly in front of them does. Tregaskis moves with a group that angles slightly inland. Away from the sound of surf he can no longer hear. The ground rises more consistently now. Roots push through the surface at irregular angles. They force careful foot placement. The brush thickens, then thins. Sometimes it opens just enough to suggest space ahead. Sometimes it closes again without warning. He does not know how far they are meant to go. The briefings had included distances, lines on maps. Those numbers do not translate here. Every direction looks the same once the trees close in. The sky above is barely visible through the canopy, a dull gray, no sense of orientation. If they have moved 100 yards or 1,000, he cannot tell. Men appear and disappear at the edges of his vision. A helmet passes behind a trunk, does not re-emerge. Another figure materializes from the right, pauses long enough to exchange a glance, then moves on. Units bleed together and pull apart. Whatever structure existed on the boats has been replaced by proximity and momentum. The expectation of resistance remains constant, a pressure that does not spike, does not fade. Every sound feels like it could be the one that matters. Leaves brushing fabric, a boot snapping a twig, the soft click of a safety being checked again. Each noise is evaluated, discarded. The body reacts faster than thought, tightens, then loosens again. Tregaskis becomes aware of fatigue settling in beneath the tension. His shoulders ache from carrying the pack. Sweat runs down his back, trapped by gear that does not breathe. The notebook presses against his chest with every step, a reminder that he is carrying something unnecessary and essential at the same time. He does not consider taking it out. There is still nowhere to put it. They move through a shallow depression. The ground dips briefly, collects dampness. Smell. The air here feels stagnant, thick with decay. He steps over something he cannot identify in the low light. Does not look down to confirm what it was. Looking down would mean losing track of the men ahead of him. That feels like a greater risk. There is still no contact. The absence stretches longer than he expects. Training and anticipation begin to conflict. He feels the urge to relax, resists it. The men around him do the same. Bodies held in a constant state of readiness, a state that cannot be sustained indefinitely. The strain shows in small ways. A man rubs his jaw unconsciously, another rolls his shoulders. They try to work out stiffness without making noise. At some point, without announcement, they are clearly inland. The sense arrives not through sight, but through accumulation. The surf is gone entirely. The ground no longer slopes gently upward from the water. It rises and falls on its own terms. The vegetation feels established rather than transitional. Whatever boundary marked the beach has been left behind, without ceremony. Tregaskis wonders, briefly and without conclusion, what the men behind him are doing now. He wonders if another wave is landing, if the beach looks the same to them as it did to him, if the water is deeper, or shallower. The thought does not linger. It offers nothing actionable. The only direction that matters is forward. The group slows again, then stops. This time, the pause feels heavier, not tentative, deliberate. Men take knee positions behind trees or fallen logs. Rifles angle outward. Someone whispers a warning. It carries only a few feet. Tregaskis lowers himself slightly, crouches behind a trunk. It offers more psychological cover than real protection. He waits for something to happen, something that will explain the movement so far. A shot, an order, a signal. Nothing arrives. The forest remains still. The men hold their positions, breathing shallowly, listening. Whatever this landing will be remembered as later exists somewhere outside this moment. Whatever lines will be drawn on maps exist elsewhere. Here, there is only waiting again, deeper inland now, with fewer reference points. And the same unanswered question pressing forward. When it starts, will there be time to understand what is happening, or only time to react? This pause is different from the others. It does not feel improvised. It settles in with intention. as if enough men have reached the same limit at the same time for movement to stop without anyone needing to say so. Bodies ease into positions that suggest duration rather than moment. Knees touch ground. Packs are shifted carefully. Straps loosen just enough to relieve pressure, not enough to make noise. Tregaskis lowers himself further. The damp earth presses through the fabric of his trousers. He leans his shoulder against the trunk behind him, feels the roughness of bark through his sleeve. It is solid, but not in a way that inspires confidence. He knows, without needing to think it through, that if shooting starts, this tree will not matter much. The forest holds its breath. Sounds shrink instead of growing. Even the small noises that marked movement earlier fade as men become aware of how exposed stillness can feel. Breathing becomes shallow, deliberate. Someone nearby wipes sweat from his face with the back of his hand. The motion is slow, controlled, as if speed itself might attract attention. Minutes stretch. The sense of time loosens further, becomes difficult to measure. Tregaskis glances at his watch, immediately understands the mistake. The number does not help. It only emphasizes how long they have been sitting without explanation. He lets his wrist drop back to his knee, keeps his eyes forward. There is no conversation. Whispers, when they occur, are too quiet to carry meaning beyond a few feet. A man, a short distance away, adjusts his helmet, freezes halfway through the motion, as if suddenly aware of how large even a small movement can be. Another shifts his rifle slightly, winces at the faint sound it makes against wood. The absence of contact becomes heavier here than it was during movement. Advancing had given the tension somewhere to go. Stopping traps it. Every man is left alone with his expectations, with the training that insists something should happen next, with the reality that nothing is happening at all. Tregaskis becomes acutely aware of his own body, the ache in his legs from crouching, the dampness soaking into his boots and socks, the slow trickle of sweat down his back, cooling now that he is no longer moving. He resists the urge to shift position again, knowing that discomfort is preferable to drawing attention. He thinks about writing, not as an action, as an impulse. The desire to fix this moment in words presses in on him, sharpened by the understanding that this kind of waiting will be difficult to explain later. He knows that if he does not capture it somehow, it will collapse into a single sentence when retold. He also knows there is no safe way to do it now. He keeps his hand still. Somewhere ahead a sound breaks the stillness. Not loud. It could be a branch settling, or an animal moving through undergrowth. Heads lift slightly, bodies tense again. Muscles tighten in unison. Rifles track toward the source of the noise, then hold, unmoving, waiting for confirmation that never arrives. The sound does not repeat. The forest returns to its previous quiet, unchanged, unbothered. No order follows, no one stands, no one advances. The moment stretches, unresolved. Whatever had drawn attention dissolves back into the background without explanation. Tregaskis feels the weight of uncertainty settle deeper. This is not the relief that follows survival. It is something thinner, more brittle. A pause that could end at any second, in any direction. He understands now that this landing will not resolve itself cleanly. There will be no clear point where fear is replaced by understanding, where tension gives way to certainty. The men around him remain where they are, eyes forward, bodies held in readiness that cannot be sustained indefinitely. He senses fatigue creeping in at the edges of that readiness. Not enough to be acted on yet, enough to be noticed. The quiet is no longer empty. It is crowded with anticipation. If safety exists anywhere in this moment, it is not here. This pause offers no reassurance, no clarity, no promise that the worst has passed. It is simply a space between movements, between expectations, where nothing happens loudly enough to be named, and everything feels like it is waiting its turn. The pause eventually loosens. Not because anything has changed, because holding still any longer begins to feel like its own kind of risk. Movement resumes in small increments. Men rise from their knees carefully, testing balance, before committing weight. Packs are settled again. Rifles remain raised. No one speaks about why they are moving now instead of a few minutes earlier. The reason does not matter enough to require agreement. Tregaskis stands. Stiffness arrives immediately. His legs respond slowly after the crouch. The ground under his boots is drier here, uneven, sloping in ways that make orientation difficult. He steps forward with the same group as before. though the group itself feels more like a coincidence than a unit. Spacing widens, then tightens again as the brush dictates. He notices absences now, not dramatically, not as losses he can name, as gaps where someone had been earlier and is no longer present. A man who had paused nearby during the halt is gone, moved ahead, or angled off to the side. Another figure he remembers from the boat is nowhere in sight. The disappearance carries no explanation. It simply registers as change. The forest looks the same in every direction. Trees do not thin. Ground does not open into anything recognizable as a position or objective. There is no sign this movement is building toward a moment of contact or resolution. The war, as it presents itself to him now, is diffuse. It exists in pressure, in posture, rather than in events. Fatigue settles in more fully. The adrenaline that carried him through the water and onto the beach has thinned. His breathing is heavier now. His shoulders ache persistently rather than intermittently. The notebook presses against his chest, not sharply, dully, with the insistence of something that will not be ignored, but cannot yet be used. At one point he looks back. He cannot tell how far he has come. There is no visual marker separating where he is from where he was minutes or hours ago. The path behind him does not exist as a line. It has been erased by the movement of others, by the forest's indifference. Whatever the landing looked like from the water is already inaccessible. There are no announcements, no confirmation that the beach is secure, no acknowledgement that the first phase of anything has been completed. The men around him move as if they expect orders that do not arrive. They adjust pace and direction in response to cues that remain incomplete. The sense of operating inside a larger plan persists, without evidence. He realizes that whatever this landing will mean later will be assigned by people who were not here, people who will know outcomes, people who will be able to draw lines from this movement to consequences not yet visible. That knowledge does not exist here. Here, there is only continuation. As they move farther inland, the air grows warmer, more enclosed. Sounds change again, softened by leaf litter and damp soil. Sweat dries, then returns. Discomfort becomes constant rather than acute. Not sharp enough to demand attention, persistent enough to shape every decision. Tregaskis feels the urge to take stock, to impose order on what he has seen so far. He resists it. There will be time later, if later exists. For now, any attempt to frame this experience feels premature. The story has not revealed itself. It is still unfolding in fragments, none of them complete. The men continue forward. Then pause. Then move again. The pattern repeats without rhythm. Each halt carries the same uncertainty as the last. Each movement forward feels provisional, as if it might be reversed, or rendered irrelevant by something unseen. The forest absorbs them without reaction. Eventually, without a moment he can point to, the landing stops feeling like an event and starts feeling like a condition, something they are inside, rather than something they are doing. Urgency fades into vigilance. Fear sharpens, then dulls, settling into something steadier, more exhausting. Tregaskis understands, without certainty, that there will be no clean ending to this experience today. No point at which he can say, the landing is over and something else has begun. The transition has already happened too gradually to mark. Whatever comes next will arrive without announcement. Just as this did. He keeps moving when the men in front of him move. He stops when they stop. He listens when there is nothing to hear. The notebook remains pressed against his chest, unread, unwritten. This is all the closure the moment offers. Not understanding, not relief, just continuation, carrying forward into terrain that does not explain itself, with consequences that exist somewhere beyond his sight, waiting to be named by others. Thanks for watching. If these stories mean something to you, subscribe. If you haven't already, it helps this channel keep such amazing people's actions alive. Comment to let us know you enjoyed the tale. Tell us, if you have a family member who served in similar situations, we'd love to hear their story. See you next time.